Hey, everyone out there on Rambling About Racing Nation. Matt Beamer here, joined as always by Charlie Hercus and Austin Reeves, getting ready to bring you another episode of Rambling About Racing. We got a fun one in store for you. Thank you for joining us. Let's get into it. This is a production of ITM Media. It's always by Charlie. Oh my goodness, already.
Oh, we were at that race.
Yes, we are here live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Again, bringing you another episode. And as the title would say, we are going down the rabbit hole this week. Just going to be talking about some stuff we've brought up here on what is known as the NASCAR Ice Burg here. We'll explain more on that later on in the show as we go along. But again, hello, everyone. Matt Beamer here, joined as always by Charlie Hercus and Austin Reeves from the great state of Alabama. Gentlemen, how's it going? And Charlie, happy belated Father's Day. And Austin, getting ready for your first Father's Day next year. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Going great. Oh, go ahead, Austin.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
So, no, it's going good. You know, like you said, celebrated Father's Day yesterday. I got to say, my best Father's Day yet. So, I know your first one's always great when, you know, you have a newborn child and it's your first Father's Day ever. But I got to admit, this year's probably been my best Father's Day yet. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, it just had a great day. Like, you know, it was seriously just a happy Father's Day. You know, me, Emma, Kelsey had just kind of a movie night last night. We were all just chilling out, really. I mean, it was just a laid back, great day. So didn't really have a care in the world that I thought about yesterday. So, Matt, I know you celebrated your first Father's Day. So how did that go for you? Was it everything you had expected it to be?
I will be 100% honest with you, Charlie. It wasn't, because here's what happened.
Worked.
I worked. Okay, you got me there. I worked actually all week from Saturday all the way up to this morning. And Friday night Caroline actually did something nice for me. Friday night, I finally got a client. So I worked on his car. I detailed his car, maybe have a few more down the line, but finally starting to get the business up and running there. I came home and Caroline ordered me a pizza and made me a Father's Day card with Maury's little handprint in there. So we celebrated Father's Day quickly all there on Friday. Really appreciated what Caroline did there. And then I went to work from Saturday morning all the way to Monday morning.
Yeah, so, those little handmade cards like that with like the baby's handprint. I got a couple of like Emma's footprint and stuff like that. Those are some of the best ones.
Yeah, it was. And it was a lot of fun to open up and just have some pizza and celebrate kind of a quick Father's Day there. So thanks to Caroline for putting that together. But Austin, I know you're looking forward to your first Father's Day next year. How's the pregnancy going? How's your wife doing? How's everything going over there for you?
It's going good down here. She's still the same. Hormones, good, bad, and ugly. Had a pretty good Father's Day weekend. I went fishing with my granddad. Only bad thing that happened is when we got done fishing, we had about 100 crickets left, and I put them in my truck. And coming home from Sampson, Alabama, I had to slam on the brakes, and there's about 25 loose crickets in my truck, and that's pretty fun. So, but everything's going good.
That'll drive you nuts there.
Well, I drove from about your house all the way back up here to Millbrook, 2 hours with them suckers chirping. So,
can't believe you didn't even stop by and say hey.
Well, I mean, hey, that's all good and all, man. I mean, that's awesome stuff. Happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And, you know, I hope everybody had a good day. Hope everybody had an enjoyable day with their family, their wives, their kids, and whomever else you spent Father's Day with. Hopefully you spent it with your father. My father's down there in South Alabama, in Dothan, actually. So just calling him, wishing him a happy Father's Day. But happy Father's Day, nonetheless, to all the fathers out there. And hope you really enjoyed it. So now we get into this down the rabbit hole thing. We're going to change the show up a little bit. And what we're going to do is, and hey, Taylor, how's it going? And just wanted to tell you how this format of the show is going to go real quick. So we're going to do our race reviews early, and then that way we can just ramble on about all the stuff that's going on. If you want to kind of be a part of it and chat up with us, Google or look up the NASCAR Ice Burg. It's, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers of this iceberg here. And we're going to pick one or two things. Charlie, Austin, and I are going to pick a few things just to kind of talk about here and what we think about it, and then maybe a few other things just to see where the show goes here. Just kind of no really control at the helm, and we're just going to go off on it. But races this week, and we had the truck race from Knoxville. We had the Formula One race from Canada, and surprisingly enough, we forgot to mention on last week's episode the SRX event here that launched there at Pensacola Speedway. That's Five Flag Speedway there in Pensacola. But gentlemen, quickly, just tell us what you thought about the race weekend in general, and what do you guys think of it?
I enjoyed it. I didn't get to catch most of the truck race. I did watch it a little bit. Did watch the SRX race. I thoroughly enjoy those races. I was actually able to attend one last year in Nashville. I like the format of it. It's something different.
Austin even got a picture with Haley Deegan.
I did.
Oh, nice.
I did. She smiled.
Smiled. Because you spelled funny.
No, I had deodorant on that day.
Okay. Well, hey, but I mean, to me, I'm just going to say it right now. Ty Gittleman won the Truck Series race. Oh my gosh. Max Verstappen, no surprise here, won the Canadian Grand Prix. And the SRX race was won by Helio Castroneves. And that was about it. I mean, there wasn't really, it was good racing, but it wasn't anything to really write home about. I'm just kind of excited about talking about these topics here, though. But yeah, was it really anything to write home for you guys?
Not really. Other than Bubba Pollard finishing second in the SRX race.
Yeah, and that was after coming back from, last, so to speak, because he had a flat tire during the main feature. And I really feel like he, if he wouldn't have had to use his car up to get all the way back to the front, the local track favorite would have beaten all these all-stars, so to speak. So I thought the race was pretty good. I do enjoy the truck races whenever you have something like Stuart Friesen and his wife racing in the same race together, even though she went for a pretty wild ride.
She flipped.
Yeah. But they flipped it back over, and she kept racing. So she
Good
kept racing until there was some other issue that come about. But that dirt track, though, I like that better than I would ever say put dirt on Bristol in the Cup Series, run it or something like that.
Right.
It's a 1 mile track. It's flat. You dirt race on that. Bristol, you're still driving like an actual paved track because of the banking and all that. So I don't enjoy the Bristol dirt race. I did enjoy the truck race just because you were actually dirt tracking, so to speak, those trucks instead of just laying a line down and driving it like a slick asphalt track.
Right. And I noticed that too. And it's very, if you compare anything to Bristol dirt, especially if it's an actual dirt track like Knoxville or Eldora or any other dirt track within the nation, and Bristol dirt's going to be a joke. It really is.
Yeah, I agree.
Even when they run the dirt sprint cars there and the dirt late models there, it's not the same as if you were to go, in my case, to Sumter, South Carolina, and see them race on Sumter Speedway. It's not the same. If it's a traditional dirt track that's actually meant to be a dirt track, yeah, it's going to be great racing, probably 9 times out of 10, just throughout the every class that there is. But if you throw down dirt on Bristol or any type of speedway for that matter, just any type of speedway, you're going to have that issue where it's not packed in right. It's just not taken care of right. Even though they did a good job this year, vice last year, with the dirt race there at Bristol, I'm be more than happy if the 2023 schedule came out and the dirt race wasn't on there. That's just me.
Yeah. It goes back into the the banking side of stuff. Whenever we used to race go-karts, we raced on tracks that had some banking. I've ran 90, 95 mile an hour on a dirt track before with slicks on these go-karts. So I get it. It's a go-kart. You're talking about NASCAR, a lot of horsepower or whatever. But we're running slicks, and you drive it like an asphalt track. So I think the banking has a lot to do with it. That may not be the case, but I enjoy the flatter tracks for sure. So
yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was the Knoxville race. Again, Ty Gilliland won that race. The Formula One Grand Prix. You guys watch that when I take it?
I went back and looked at the results. Verstappen showed up and showed out, but undoubtedly, from what it looked, it was a pretty close battle at the end there, because the second place car was less than a second behind him in the finishing.
Yeah, Carlos Sainz was trying to catch him, but the Red Bull power just didn't let that happen. So fortunately, he finished second. I was hoping for a Ferrari victory because Charles Leclerc qualified bad and ended up finishing in the top 5. But my biggest thing was from that race was the Haas cars of Kevin Magnussen and Mick Schumacher qualified real well, although be it they qualified in the rain. So there was a little bit of a curveball thrown in there. I was expecting them to run well in both cars. Didn't run well at all. Mick Schumacher getting a DNF early on in the race, bringing out a virtual safety car. Mm-hmm. Just more issues with Haas right there. It was unfortunate because I wanted to see him run well. I think every American that's a Formula One fan pulls for
wants to see Haas run good.
I mean, everybody wants to see Haas run good, but I think we'll get more into that. I feel like down the rabbit hole here. I got a question to throw out there for you guys. But then the SRX race. I mean, my initial. Did you guys watch the SRX race?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my initial thoughts of that were that the SRX race was it was a good race. It was exciting. But then I looked at it kind of like last year. It was new. It's exciting, kind of like being in a new relationship with those butterflies. And, oh, this is new. You know what? You know that feeling I mean? And then all of a sudden you get to a year later and it's like, well, it's okay still. It's a bad analogy. But that's kind of the way I took it. How do you guys take the SRX race this weekend?
I enjoyed it. I'm glad they changed the schedule up, went to different tracks. I like Five Flags. I enjoyed it. I'm a Bubba Pollard fan at heart. I really enjoyed him watching him run that race. He's kind of the guy that he's going to wait till about 30, 25 laps to go, and then he's just going to start blistering people inside, outside. I think if he didn't have that tire go down, he'd have won. I just hope people see Bubba Pollard as like me and Charlie see him. He's the king.
Yeah, he ran a good race that past weekend, and I thought he did a good job, though I don't know much about Bubba Pollard except for what you guys say. He did a good job for me, and I like the fact that SRX brings in a local track legend to race in that series. It kind of puts more exposure to them. Yeah, that lets people know that aren't necessarily in that part of the country who this guy is and what he can do and what he does there and his history behind there. So I really do like that part of that.
To add on to that there, the local track, it didn't matter if he had won 4 championships down there or not. They had to race in the super late models for that spot. There was a doubleheader on Friday, Saturday night last year or earlier this year.
It was earlier this year.
Yeah. That they had to, it was the overall best finish between the 2 races together. Bubba won one of them, I believe. Mm-hmm. He finished like second or third in one of them.
Yeah.
And then had another good run the next night. And that's what got him that spot. So it could have been anybody in that super late model field. So they had to race for that spot.
Nancy, yeah. And there was a bunch of, if you're a super late model team and you run at Five Flags, you're pretty bad. Who drives for Campbell? Thorne.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a bunch of candidates.
Thorne was one of them.
There was a lot of candidates.
I think Chandler Smith went and ran that.
He did.
Right, and that's what I like about the SRX series. Tony Stewart does a good job of promoting that and promoting the local drivers at those tracks. But it was a good race. And I like the fact that it's a short season. Can't wait till next race. We'll bring you up to speed on that. Definitely this episode when the next race is. But that was our let's do the race of the weekend, and then we'll start going down this rabbit hole. Race of the weekend for you guys. We'll start off with Austin.
SRX race at Pensacola.
All right. What about you, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm going to go with that as well, just for the fact of, they run some heat races and your lineup is, your starting lineup is determined by your average finish of the first and second heat race. Also enjoyed seeing Ryan Newman back out on the track again. So I've always liked No Neck Newman, and he's a great driver, and he showed this past weekend he's still got it. So he's just living life and enjoying it right now. So glad to see him in the SRX series, and it's a lot of fun to watch, and we'll watch him throughout the rest of their season.
Yep, I'd have to say the SRX does it for me. So a clean sweep from the Ramblin' About Racing crew for the SRX series for the race of the weekend. We'll get into this weekend's races at the end of the show before we get into our final thoughts. But now we get ready to go down the rabbit hole, and we're going to start off with our question of the week last week, which was, should the Xfinity series have something to set themselves apart from the Cup series? We talked about it a little last week, how the Xfinity series seems to have they're a feeder system for the Cup series, but there's essentially not that far off of the Cup series. They are, but they aren't. They're still stock cars in a sense. But I'm gonna start off with one of you two, unless you want me to go first. And
you take the lead on this one.
Okay, because in thinking about it, it is a feeder system to the Cup series, and I think it would be wrong to change anything up drastically, like making an SUV series, making an electronic series, an E series, what have you, a hybrid series, where I think that's untapped potential for NASCAR to start something like that, maybe an SUV series or anything else along those lines. So I think it would behoove NASCAR to leave it alone. And Xfinity series produces great racing. I've loved it ever since it was the Busch series up to the Nationwide series, now the Xfinity series. Always enjoyed it. Don't like the bushwhackers coming down, but at the same time, Charlie always brings it up. It's a money thing, and money's kind of ruined this sport for us in a sense down the line since the early 2000s. But yeah, I mean, in thinking about it, I mean, I wanted to come out here this week and say, yeah, they should change up everything about the Xfinity series and make it its own standalone series. And that way, if you want to make it up to the Cup level, you'd have to learn how to drive a truck. Then you have to learn how to drive something else. And then you'd be a good all-around driver to drive in the Cup series. But in thinking about it, I'm just going to say leave it alone. And if NASCAR wants to start an E series or anything along those lines, then go ahead and start an E series. Just don't touch the Cup series or don't touch the Xfinity series too much.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they should change anything dramatically. I really don't know what they could change.
Drastically.
Yeah, drastically is the key word there. Subtle change.
What did I say?
You said dramatically.
Yeah, I heard drastically.
Go ahead.
It don't matter. But yeah, I mean, don't change up the whole series. I don't think a electric series or SUV series would be it. If you want to say SUV series, go to a local short track race when they have the demolition derbies.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I'm with y'all. Don't change anything up. If they were to make the Xfinity series a electric series, that's just taken away from the whole point of it being a feeder into the Cup series. So it's two different cars. If you're going to drive an electric car and then turn around and get into the Cup car with, however many horsepower, not that electric cars don't have horsepower, they got a lot of torque, but I think if that's the case, the Xfinity series should visit a lot. If anything, they should visit a lot different or more tracks than what the Cup Series runs. I think they should run a different schedule. I get it, logistically speaking, for some of the teams, but if you're going to change anything, I say do like the ARCA Series does, where they go to like Toledo, Ohio, and Five Flags, and go to all these other tracks. You
So
don't
you're-
run the
you're
same ones to
talking
Cup Series.
You're talking about like going to your grassroots tracks.
Yes. Yeah.
I'd agree.
I could see if they're going to make a change, they change the schedule up, but not the series.
I like that because I might deter drivers like a Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, or anybody coming down. Hey, since they're here this weekend, I might as well race this race and this race as well as the Cup race. I might deter a lot of people because we saw that in Portland when the Xfinity Series was in Portland. Not a lot of drivers, in fact, I don't think one took the time to go over there except AJ Allmendinger to go over there to the Xfinity Series and race and then turn around and get on a plane right back there to St. Louis to race Gateway.
Yep.
So I agree with that.
Yeah, I think you would eliminate with that taking place. I think you would eliminate a lot of the top tier Cup Series drivers coming down to race a lower series, regardless of money and stuff like that. So I think with just a schedule change period, you would eliminate a lot of problems.
Yeah, that would eliminate a lot. But that was our question of the week. Let us know what you think using hashtag what you think ITM on all social media platforms, what you thought about that. And if they should maybe just end up changing the schedule up to more grassroots racing for the Xfinity Series. I think that's a good point, Charlie. I think that takes home the cake right there. But now we get into this rabbit hole thing. And it's and like I said, this is the NASCAR Ice Burg. I don't know who made it. I'll put it in the podcast description below. But there are, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 levels to this iceberg. And it seems like the further down you go in the iceberg, the darker and more controversial it gets. So I figured you, me, and Austin, Charlie, and myself will start from the top, pick maybe 1 or 2 things that we see up there that catches our interest, and we could talk about it. And we'll just keep it simple like that. We'll also post this in the description of the podcast. So, I mean, we could kind of just get it all out there. But this is going to be, I think, really an interesting episode. And I can't wait to see where it goes. We're going to start off at the top and pick 1 or 2 things. And we're going to start off with, unless you guys want me to start off with, kind of just pick one and go.
Yeah, go ahead. This was your idea. So grab one and go.
All right, grabbing one and go. So I'm going to starting off at the top. It has a whole list of ones, but the one I'm going to pick that I can't stand the most is Boogity Boogity Boogity.
Oh,
Darryl Waltrip used to say on every race broadcast, even hearing it on Bristol Dirt this past season, or this season, I should say, just how annoying that got. I can't imagine. I'm glad we don't have to hear it anymore. For when, as much as we talk about the Fox broadcasting, them getting rid of Darryl Waltrip and that whole boogity 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 thing definitely helped out everything.
Yep, had my vote.
Yeah, so that was number 1 for me. So
I mean, as a kid listening to it when I was young, it was cool. But now that you get older,
yeah, Austin was running around the yard without a shirt on, just
waving around.
I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, you hear stuff when you're younger, like that's the coolest thing. It's like watching a movie that you thought was the best movie in the world when you were younger. Then you get older, it's like this movie blows. It just sucks. So I mean, that would be the number 1 for me. But I can't wait to see what you guys say, and we'll just tear that apart here. What about you, Austin and Charlie?
I'm looking.
And by the way, so anybody race or watching us out there on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, bring up Google the NASCAR Ice Burg, and if you have something, let us know what you have there on all levels. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the boogity 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 thing, that's why Leo Reeves hates round track racing now. It's because they got rid of that. So, I hope
there's a lot more variables why he hates round track racing.
Absolutely. I think if we're going down a rabbit hole, I truly think the next one that needs to go is Larry McReynolds.
Okay, why is that? I mean, these aren't necessarily these have to go. These are just things that kind of piss us off or might make us happy. They don't necessarily have to piss us off here, by the way.
Yeah, you said a bad word, but that's cool. Okay. No, I just his time's up. I mean, he's ran his course. he's not America's crew chief anymore. So, or at least not to me. I feel like we could get somebody else in there, bring a different attitude to the booth there. But what really got me, I guess, and was ruined me on Larry Reynolds was earlier this year with the whole. Well, I was on a sabbatical. I never retired, and then he went back to crew chief and number. It's just a big stink, big publicity stunt. Yes, the 3-car ran good.
With Carrier and Talladega.
Correct. The 3-car ran good. Don't get me wrong. But it's also Talladega. Anybody can win it. So I think that's their way of trying to boost Larry McReynolds' numbers back up as far as being a broadcaster. And I just think it's time for him to go. I would love to see Adam Alexander come up and call the race on Sundays.
It's almost like a Brett Favre or a Peyton Manning. Like, when it's your time, it's your time. Like, retire, get out there, bring the next one in line up, let him showcase him.
Yep, I agree. I'd like to see a couple of the females that call the races get their shot at being a main broadcaster rather than just a pit road reporter or
talking about like Jamie Little.
Yeah, somebody like her. And I feel like anybody can explain these cars if they're given a darn TV screen in front of them as far as, well, this is what they're referring to. Well, yeah, Larry, I mean, I get it. You're trying to preach to the idiots that are just watching the race and don't understand. All they're doing is going fast and turning left and don't understand the technical side. But that's not the majority of us. The majority of us that actually watch the race and enjoy the racing know a little bit about the cars and how a car works. So just ruined it for me. And that's rabbit hole. Boogity, boogity, boogie took me down.
Well, I'm going to ask you this, Charlie. I don't see Larry McReynolds on the top point at the Ice Burg. Is he on there?
He's not, or at least I don't think he is. But
you're just adding him. Okay.
I added him.
We're going.
By all means, I added him.
Yeah,
I'll send you a revised iceberg shortly.
Okay, sounds good. What about you, Austin? What do you see on that top section of the iceberg that I sent you guys?
A lot of these I'm too damn young for.
Like, give us a for instance, and then Charlie and I will take you down nostalgia way there.
Well, there's 2311 racing up there.
You're old enough for that. iRacing, you do that.
Yeah.
Y'all want to talk about?
There's Let's Go Brandon. If you wanted to talk about that,
let's avoid that.
Yeah, we'll stay out of that. Y'all want to hear rednecks or iRacing?
Let's hear iRacing. You're new to iRacing.
Oh,
let's hear
man.
iRacing.
I thought you was going to go with rednecks.
No, let's hear iRacing.
I enjoy iRacing. I started getting into it, or before I got into it, a buddy of mine told me you'll spend just as much money on iRacing as you will an actual car. And I was like, hey, there's no way you can do it.
Truth has been told.
And I bought all my stuff, and my first round track car I bought, I've got just as much money in this computer stuff as I do race cars. So it's true, and this will piss you off just like a regular race car will too.
And remember this, Austin, this is the number one thing that I said on this show before, and I think I coined it. If you wreck in iRacing, it's always someone else's fault.
I don't know. There's been a few times I've dumped somebody, and I'm like, yeah, well. Matt Beamer said it's not my fault. But
while we're on iRacing, this is what I don't understand. Austin has made it all the way up to B class already. Now, granted, he's raced a lot more than I have on there lately because he's just got all this time in the world because he don't have kids yet. But
driver.
It's because you don't have kids yet.
Don't
kid yourself. You're an incredible slouch. But anyway,
I'm a sleeper.
But Austin talks about dumping people, and he's still moving up in class. If you or I go there and we dump somebody, hey, you're going all the way back down to rookie.
I didn't say I dumped him in a points race. It might have been a hosted race.
Oh, that's a good point there, Charlie.
Yeah,
hosted races don't count against you.
You're right.
And to be honest, I'm an A class driver. So what do you got to say about that, Charlie?
Damn, Charlie.
I don't see you wasn't talking about dumping people.
I try not to dump people.
I don't.
But you also raced it a lot more than I have too.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't do it
not much
intentionally.
anymore.
I don't do it intentionally, but there's just some people that get on there and you just got to do it.
They're like an orange and white 96 car that you just want to, but you can't because you'll get suspended again.
Well, here, Preston brought up a good point here, and I think it's lower down on the iceberg, and I'm going to have to bring it up here, but Preston brings up a good point, even though he's not here again. He said Talladega Nights, that movie ruined non-NASCAR fans' perspective of the sport of NASCAR. Agree or disagree?
I'll agree. Hands
agree.
down.
100%.
They, that just makes it look like it's all a freaking joke.
Yeah.
And I don't mind watching Talladega Nights, but at the same time, it pisses me off. Just for the fact of they make the sport look like a joke in the movie. Yeah. And
I agree.
I get it. It's a movie, but dang.
It's more of a comedy show than a racing show.
Yeah. It's more, I guess it's more of a pride thing for me when you grew up into sport and then you see stupid movies like this and it's all anybody can talk about. NASCAR or Ricky Bobby, who gives a flying shit?
I want to go fast. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not how it works. Like, whatever. I ain't, y'all gonna make me mad about this one, so I ain't even gonna talk about
that's the whole point of this
podcast. I know, but
going down the rabbit hole. But
I only have so many beers, and y'all are gonna make me blow through them just off Talladega Nights.
That's fine.
Here's what I say: as well as NASCAR, or as Days of Thunder helped out with NASCAR's push and popularity and mainstream culture and all that, Talladega Nights did the same thing, but the reverse,
in a negative way.
But the reverse happened. When I watched the movie, I watched it in theaters in Okinawa, Japan when I was over there. And at first it was funny. It's like, oh, this is great. And then it got more into it. It's like,
it got dumber and dumber.
These guys are just straight up making fun of NASCAR the whole time. And
you had Pepe Le Pew come in with the Frenchie,
right?
Or whatever.
And it was just one of those things where it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, they're totally painting this sport to be bad. And that was under the helm of Brian France. So I'm going to say it was Brian France's fault, who signed off on it and said, this is going to be great for the show. Will Ferrell's going to bring a lot more fans to the sport. But
Will Ferrell's funny, not a serious actor. He's funny. Yeah. So they should have knew what kind of movie this was going to end up being.
Right.
I wish they'd make a Days of Thunder too.
No, leave it alone. Don't make a sequel.
You don't think they can make
one? Tom Cruise flew a jet however many years later. He could drive a race car however many years later, too.
It's simple. It's simple. Clutch it, shift, and turn left.
Yeah. Now, Cole, when that line reads 9,000 RPM, that's bad.
That's bad.
I'll never forget the Rattler when you came over and said that on the radio.
Hey, real quick, guys. Who's Tyler Thomas? And says
he's my neighbor.
Oh, okay. Because he said he's going to put some shake and bake in the 83. Okay.
I gotta have something. These next two races are mine. I'll go ahead and call it now.
Oh boy. Okay, we're going to hold you up to that. Okay. Before we get, we're going and look at this. I'm trying to bring back. It's like before we go too far down the rabbit hole, which is the point of this episode here. We're going to
only dig so deep.
Well, this is going to be a deep hole there, I tell you. We're going to say that we're going to go to the second level of the iceberg here, gentlemen. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys unless you want me to go first.
We're going to make this hole a gaping hole now.
Oh, gosh. So I got one here, and this is a good one. This is a big one for me. And the second level of the iceberg has a whole number of things, and you guys can pick whatever you want, but I'm going to pick AT&T here. And as significant as that is to a lot of people hearing it, maybe Austin or maybe everybody else, I find that to be a big thing because when Sprint and Nextel came into the sport, we used to see, and I'm going to go down and rant here on this one. Back in the early 2000s, we saw cars with one sponsor the whole time. Dale Earnhardt and / Kevin Harvick had Goodwrench. Mm-hmm. Rusty Wallace had Miller Lite. Dale Jr. had Budweiser. Sterling Marlin had Coors Light. We saw Ward Burton had Caterpillar. We saw one sponsor on these cars. from the drop of the green flag at Daytona to the checkered flag at Homestead. We saw that. And AT&T was a brand new sponsor in the sport. Back then it was called Singular, but they were still breaking in 2001 with Jason Leffler, even though he didn't do so well. But then they eventually migrated to Richard Childress Racing and Jeff Burton in the 31 car. Well, they signed this and Singular was bought out by AT&T. They bought this they signed this multi-year package, but then Nextel or Sprint, I think it was more Sprint that came up there and said, we don't want our competition on the racetrack underneath the title sponsor of Sprint. Mm-hmm. What I don't like about that is that you have, in a sense that it takes away from everything. We used to see Lowe's and Home Depot on the track and nobody said anything. In fact, when it was called the Winston Cup, we saw Camel cigarettes on there with Jimmy Spencer. There's nothing wrong with competition, but what I don't like is when money comes in and big corporations run the show, Vice NASCAR running the show, and saying, if you don't like it, you can take your sponsorship money somewhere else, and we'll put another sponsor on there that's more than willing at the height of its popularity to have some exposure time on TV on a car.
Yeah, to add on to that, you don't see hard liquors in the
not anymore
series anymore either.
You don't see tobacco products either.
Exactly. I think they got rid of tobacco products first. You couldn't advertise it. And let's face it, it's not just about the money on this side of stuff. It's a lot of the politics as well. Because when tobacco was,
there's a big difference there.
Yeah, definitely. You don't smoke Tabasco. But when
Tabasco smokes you,
when they were made to where they could not sponsor a car in a Cup Series, there was a big push at that point in time in culture in general to get rid of tobacco products. So I hate that, but going back to the alcohol side of stuff, like you said, you have Miller Lite, you had Budweiser. Well, now you have Miller Lite and you have Busch Light.
You don't even have Miller Lite anymore.
There's some of them fruity drinks. Who was it? Kaz Gralla? Or somebody was sponsored by a fruity drink here a while back.
Seltzer drink? See,
yeah, I think it was Gralla.
You drink enough of these beers or enough of the Jack Daniels or whatever it is, and it doesn't matter if you're promoting drinking. It's the point of the sport. Everybody out there, for the most part, has a beer in their hand, or they're going back to the campsite having a few shots of Jack Daniels or whatever.
You wait till we get to our campsite.
I mean, that's what I'm saying here. But then you have these
boogity.
You have whoever is the brainchild behind that saying we shouldn't have pushed hard liquor, but beer is okay. What's the difference?
Exactly. Both of them's alcohol products.
Both of them will inebriate the mind to the point where you are not cognitive. Thank you. Where you're not cognitive in your actions or whatever to a point, unless you know your limit.
And then boom, pregnant with twins.
Okay, well,
that's how it happened.
That's how it happened. Okay.
Now, I must have drank a lot because I do not remember that night at all.
Oh my goodness, we're not going down that rabbit hole. I'll tell you that right now. I think that takes away from potential sponsors coming into the sport. I mean, we used to see Crown Royal on Jamie McMurray's car to make your point to counteract what was on Clint Boyer's car and the Jack Daniels car, and that car was nice. The 07 car, that was a beautiful machine.
That was Boyer's prime too. So.
That was, and we got that robbed from us because some guy got his panties in the wad and saying, well, we shouldn't do that because it promotes alcoholism or some crap like that.
But beer's okay.
But beer is perfectly acceptable. And
I bet if we look at the statistics, more DUIs or anything like that is beer related than hard liquor.
But it doesn't matter. I mean,
I don't know.
If you let the sponsors, the whole point of the AT&T thing was if you let the sponsors dictate what goes on in the sport as far as sponsorship wise, then you will eventually get to the point where we are now. And, we have 4 title sponsors and it's now the Cup Series. We don't have a title sponsor anymore.
No.
So
it's communism in NASCAR.
Yeah, I mean, and I blame Brian France for that piece of crap, because he ruined what his dad did and what his grandfather built in this sport. And whoever, and I don't know if it was Bill France Jr. I'm pretty sure it was, who said, "Hey, Brian, you're good to run NASCAR in the 2004 season. So changes are going to be made." And he just totally took this into the crapper. What was a beautiful sport. I mean, just printing money. They were just printing money, man. And now all of a sudden, you can't get a title sponsor in the Cup Series.
Yep.
That's just my.
Yeah, you have to bring in 3 or 4 different people to be your primary title sponsors. Just because no single
Austin
sponsor wants to fork it out.
No, nobody does. And Austin, tell me the 4 title sponsors of the NASCAR Cup Series.
4 title sponsors of the NASCAR Cup Series. They're not even mentioned except in the little banner down there if you're lucky. But what are the 4 title sponsors? I don't know.
Coca-Cola, Geico, Xfinity, and Busch. But
and the only reason why Kevin Harvick still gets to run a Busch car is because they're the title sponsor.
Right. Where did Miller Lite go? Where did Budweiser go? If Rambling About Racing was the title sponsor of the NASCAR Cup Series, I would love to have other podcasts and other YouTube channels on cars. It'd be like, hey, man,
it brings in the competitive side of stuff too.
Right. It makes it more interesting to me. But that was just from AT&T. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say on this second level of the iceberg.
I'm looking.
Well, I want to go with. Well, where'd it go? Hang on.
Oh, I know mine.
And we are live.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Juan Pablo Montoya, jet driver.
God, that's what it was.
Well, you can take it. I'm looking for another one then.
Okay, so
we'll just talk about that one, both of us. So, did everybody stay up to watch that race? Because that was a very, very long race.
It happened until went to 2 a.m?
Yeah. I wound up just hollering and then realizing that I was hollering because Dale Jr., if I'm not mistaken, Dale Jr. won that race.
Matt Kenseth won that race.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Well, anyway, I was hollering because I stayed downstairs and Emma was asleep upstairs and she was just a baby. So I almost got in trouble, but I was hollering for that race. I stayed up all night to watch it, and it was a freak accident, but at the same time, Juan Pablo should not have been in NASCAR. He was not very competitive other than his road course win.
I think, but he only had one win, one.
Yeah. And all of those were on road courses. So,
but I mean, no, Juan Pablo Montoya had every right to be in NASCAR. We've seen drivers come over from Indy Car to NASCAR, NASCAR to Indy Car. Very few from NASCAR to Formula One. But Juan Pablo Montoya, I feel like himself in Indy.
Yes, he should have been there, but he just reminds me of a lot of people though that did not have the consistent runs. And granted, would this, if the new car came out back then, would it have been a completely different story? Yeah, possibly, because Daniel Suarez is running really, really good this year for the most part. So I don't know. I shouldn't have said he didn't need to be in the series because, I mean, let's face it, he brought in the money. He got himself a ride. He just didn't run consistent enough, I guess, to what I would say to hold a full-time ride. Of course, we could talk about Corey LaJoie in that same aspect. So
right, we could, and I mean, I feel like that was just a freak accident. That wasn't Juan Pablo Montoya's fault. Something was wrong with that car.
Yeah, it broke.
Yeah, something broke in the front, I think, right front.
In the rear, I think. But that caused him to hit the jet dryer and it cascade that whole thing. That just was a crazy thing. I mean, I don't think any of us have ever seen like that happen before that or since that. But that's just one of those things that stuff happens. And I mean, it was what it was. And it just happened to be Juan Pablo Montoya. Now the famous joke you hear all the time, how many drivers does it take to take out a
jet dryer?
One. I mean, that's where the famous joke comes from. But yeah. But what about you, Austin? Let's hear your pick from that section of the iceberg there.
If you want to use that one, I'll get it.
Wait, that was Austin's, right?
Yeah, that's my pick. I said it first.
All right, let's hear yours, Charlie.
So I'd have to go with the LGB coin.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that was an interesting one because that just recently happened, and
Yeah.
NASCAR wants to separate themselves from the Let's Go Brandon chant as far as the one is to infinity.
But in a lot of ways, that's just a pot calling the kettle black. I mean,
Why do you say that?
because you're going from one extreme to the other. It's okay to run. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. So I guess we probably shouldn't talk about that one too far because it'll probably get ugly. Yeah, that'll open up a rabbit hole for sure.
And real quick,
that was a bad one.
Okay. Well, real quick, while you pick another one, we're gonna give a quick shout out to Tracy there. Happy Father's Day to you for your first Father's Day. But hey, you want me to pick one for you? Because
let's go with charter system.
Okay, the charter system. That's a good one to talk about. We've hinted it on it many times here on the show. What do you feel about the charter system here?
I don't like it, but at the same time, I understand it. So that your teams that are running for points every week, but when you're only running 36 to 38 cars every week, the charter system's irrelevant because everybody's going to qualify for it, being you have a 40 car max field. So I think if we're talking about the charter system, I think that once other manufacturers come into play, like BMW, if Dodge comes back, get rid of the charter system. If you want these new companies to prove themselves, they got to qualify for the races. But get rid of the charter systems for everybody else too. Don't let it be just a given that, oh, I'm going to make this race. No, if you're going to do that, then we need to go to a 30 car field, and people have to start going home.
Well, and I see why they put in the charter system, because they didn't want teams taking away positions just to run a few laps and then park, to start in parkers. So I get why they did it, but however, it has gotten to the point now where you're not even getting more than, it's a 40 car field now. You're not getting sometimes more than 37 cars to that field, and those are the charter cars. It used to be where you were qualifying for the Daytona 500, you would have 60, 70 cars there. Just for a shot at getting into the Daytona 500, yeah, you'd qualify and do the dual races, the Gatorade 125s, but you wouldn't have, you would have to be that Cinderella story there where everything fits right, and then you would get into the race. And it's not like that anymore. It's like Hendrick Motorsport shows up, and like, yeah, they're going to qualify probably on the pole, and then everybody else who shows up, and you might have one or two field fillers right there who aren't part of a charter system. And I don't even think they could come up there if they don't have a charter and attempt to qualify for the race.
Yeah, and we could go back to the money aspect of stuff. Like, you got a lot. Is this a way of NASCAR guaranteeing that the heavy hitter sponsors make it to the race and get as much publicity as possible?
If they don't get rid of the sponsors, because it counteracts what they were pushing there, like anything else.
Yep. Yeah. NASCAR is bad about, or has been known to push sponsors out of the sport just as badly as they're wanting sponsors to come into the sport.
Yep, I would have to agree with you there on that one, Charlie. But that was just the second level of the iceberg, and we're already an hour into this show. This is going to be a long episode here. We're maybe about 49 minutes into this show. I say hour because we recorded.
We can skip level 3 and go into level 4.
No, there's a level 3 here, one I want to bring up to you, especially, Charlie. So we're heading to level 3 of what is known as the iceberg of NASCAR, the NASCAR Ice Burg, whatever way you want to put it. And
you picked the level 3 right then with AT&T.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
No, that was level. Oh crap!
What a loser!
Oh my gosh, I went way off.
Wow. So nope, your turn's up.
Okay, my turn's up.
I'm just up.
I can't believe I did that. I totally missed that. How did I do
I'll go first on level 3.
And then I'll go back to level 2. Okay.
Digger.
Oh, Digger, that piece of crap. You remember Digger, Austin?
You don't remember Digger? Oh man,
I remember.
You're probably
little,
still crapping green and
no, when they were on TNT.
No, it was
a
on
little mole
Fox.
pop up.
Yeah, it was on. No, it was on Fox. It was the Fox Digger cam. But those were some of the best shots. Let's face it. Like
they were.
They had it planted.
I was
the track,
young, but
or had it in like a groundhog or a whatever.
Yeah, it was a gopher
spot, and would be looking at the track. Like I will say I missed some of those shots that the Digger cam got. I mean, that poor little fella, they made him stand in a hole in the track with cars going over him at Daytona at 200 mile an hour. Like, I don't blame him for leaving the sport. I'd been scared to death.
Yeah, Tracy said he loved Digger, so I couldn't really. It was an attempt to bring younger fans into the sport. Like, oh, look at this cartoon. I didn't quite get it. I mean, I think I was maybe in my early 20s when Digger came out. It's like, what the hell is this? I didn't quite get it.
The old Digger cam.
The old Digger cam. Like, holy cow. And what about you, Austin? I can't believe that.
I'm still looking.
Okay, I'll bring up one here. I'll go back to level 2 here. And it's something that I saw here. And it's a good thing, though. It's the Roval. I think that's one of the best things NASCAR did. And Charlotte Motor Speedway only did it to save their second date. But, man, was it a home run. Now, I'm not saying that every track
should implement a road course.
Like Texas or anything like that should implement a road course, especially Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I think they should have kept that the oval. But the Roval, Charlie, you and I have been there. Preston and I have been there.
Great race.
I've been there a couple times, and it was a fun race. You got to see everything that there was on that track. And if you haven't been to the Roval there at Charlotte Motor Speedway, I highly recommend that you give it a shot and then make your judgment calls in, because the Roval was one of the best races I've ever seen both times. The first time is when Ryan Blaney won, when Jimmy Johnson took out Martin Truex Jr. And the second one is when Chase Elliott wrecked going into turn 1 and ended up winning anyway. Both good races, both a great time. But that was my level 2 one. I'm going to go ahead and go down to level 4 here and pick one out here. But Austin, what do you have there for level 3?
2001 All-Star race. What was that about?
That was a fun race. What happened in the 2001 All-Star race was right when they threw the green flag for the actual All-Star race, which is, I think, the way they should go back there to that format. And I'm going to go down and rant here on a second here with that. Is that right when they were going into turn 1, or right when they dropped the green flag, I should say, it started raining.
And the whole field wrecked?
Not the whole field, but notable drivers. Michael Waltrip wrecked, Jeff Gordon wrecked, and I think 1 or 2 other ones wrecked. I think Jeff Vernon wrecked as well. And it was just a cluster right there. So they had to drive the track. But what NASCAR did, since it was a all-star race, they allowed the teams that wrecked, like Michael Waltrip and Jeff Gordon,
to a backup car,
right? Bring their cars off and say, you have this amount of time to do it. Once the track's dry and you're not out there, you're not racing. So that was a good move by NASCAR in order to do that. But then they could. What in the world? Something's going on outside my door here. I'm kind of scared here. But what that did was that they didn't have to go through tech, to my knowledge. So a lot of teams might have been cheating, and Jeff Gordon ended up winning that race, and it caused a lot of controversy because I don't think they went through tech, so that car might not have been legal in that sense. So the 2001 All-Star race was like that. It was a crazy race. It was a fun race, though. But
yeah, so my level 4 is going to be the 24 crew pits to 48. I remember this race.
Okay, talk about it.
It's just the 48 crew was doing such a crap job. The 24 had already been, falling out of the race. He had already been to the garage. So the 48 crew was doing so bad that they actually replaced the entire pit crew with Jeff Gordon's pit crew. And they came over and did the remainder of the race.
Yep.
And this goes back to also, to add on to that, this was also when your counterpart teams could get tires from your other crews. That's when it paid to have teammates, because if one teammate fell out of the race at the very beginning, well, he's got like 4 sets of brand new tires over there. Like, hey, why don't we just come down to pit every caution and play our hand at getting brand new tires every time? Now, NASCAR has already, eliminated that. You couldn't buy tires from, which I understand, because you got your single car teams like, Petty GMS and all that. Well, they're 2-car teams this year, but you eliminate, you're helping out the little man, so to speak, in those situations.
Yeah, and I don't remember the race exactly, but I do recall something like that happening a lot of times in the past, where a team member would get hurt and the team would jump over and use other supplemental crew members.
Yeah, but they replaced the whole crew.
Yeah, but they replaced the whole crew. And I mean, I guess Jack Canals, if I had a guess that he wasn't happy with the way anything was going that day, and he wanted that to happen, and somehow he talked Rick Hendricks into switching both teams, which I don't understand. That would be crazy for me.
That's kind of a shot in the
it's a
shot in the face there. Like, hey, you're not doing a good job, so you don't. Just remember, you are replaceable. So, what was you gonna say, Austin?
You can't change pit crew, so don't get no ideas.
No,
you can't swap out with the 28.
I have a pit crew. Yeah. Well, I don't know how to put a chain back on. I'll tell you that.
This is interesting right here. We got someone watching here named Bobby, and he asked if the intention of the SRX series. This could be another layer of the iceberg here, testing the waters to see if they can be the next NASCAR, or is it just an all-star race for divisions of racing? That's a good question here. We're gonna answer that here. I think it's just a good division of racing here. It's not going to be the next NASCAR. SRX.
I don't think it'll be the next NASCAR at all. But what I do like, and a point that they're proving, is that there are no manufacturers in this series. That's
a big one.
Everybody's running the same thing. It is strictly driver input and a little bit of setups that a little bit of setup stuff that they can make on these cars. I think that's the point that they're trying to prove. And I don't think Tony Stewart's out to prove anything. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like if they're out to prove anything, it is the fact that NASCAR has gotten away from, putting it into drivers' hands, and then you go to the SRX series where everybody's in the exact same equipment, same engine, same everything, and it is strictly, can you drive?
And the thing I like about it is there's one crew chief for 3 cars.
Yeah,
right.
That changes it up.
Yeah.
And it
really, how good Larry McReynolds really is if he ever does that.
Right.
I like the SRX series for that reason too, because you don't see, for one, I think you see the only differential for the cars isn't sponsors. It's the color of the car and the number. That's it. You don't see one sponsor trying to get a one-up on another. It's the Camping World SRX series, which Marcus Lemonis did a great job investing in that, as well as the Truck series. I think he's doing a great job. He's got his good markets right there. But it's the Camping World SRX series. Here are the cars. Here are the drivers. Go get them. And then we get to see drivers that we haven't seen in a while. Bill Elliott, Bobby Labonte, Michael Waltrip race, as well as IndyCar drivers, Paul Tracy, local short track drivers like that Bubba
Pollard. There you go. Bubba Pollard.
And Bubba isn't going to be everywhere every week, but then the next time SRX races, we're going to see another driver from another series get his name out there or her name out there to see if she can maybe gain, or they can maybe gain some traction and to push them up that ladder. So I like that about the SRX series, and that was a great question, Bob. Really do appreciate it. And I think it's a great series, and I'm surprised the SRX series isn't on here. Is it going to replace NASCAR? Like we said, no, it's not going to replace NASCAR. But I think it's going to bring a lot of eyes away from. I think the SRX series is going to attract the viewers who NASCAR forgot about. And I think that's the best. I think that's a good way to put it. NASCAR has turned their back on a lot of loyal fans throughout the years because of poor business decisions to try to gain one new fan by sacrificing 10 old ones. And I think the SRX series is to counteract to that. So it's kind of trying to replace it, but I don't think it'll get to the level of that, because once they do, it's going to be corrupted like NASCAR is. That's my answer to that one. But now we get into that. Thanks again, Bob, for that. Now we get into the fourth layer of the iceberg. I think you already brought it. No. I haven't done my fourth.
Yeah, me and Matt have it going.
Goodness. Okay.
Okay, so go ahead, Austin. You got one, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I was looking at this Denny / Bubba fight.
Yeah,
I don't know anything on that.
I don't remember that. I know there was.
I don't know that either.
Did they actually fight, or is it like
car
owner and driver?
No, I don't think this. I think this is before there was a 2311 into the equation there. I think it was just one of those things where they might have gotten into on-track altercation, kind of like we saw Brad Keselowski and Matt Kenseth, or Kenseth and Logano. It could have just been one of those things. I don't recall ever them fighting. And if anybody out there is watching and you know the race we're talking about where Bubba Wallace and Denny Hamlin fought, please say something, because I don't recall offhand of any time they were fighting. Well, that's just me.
I just saw it, and I didn't know if y'all knew anything about it.
This one we're going to go down the rabbit hole. One is the 2001 Pepsi 400 rigged. And I'm thinking there was a little bit of blind eyes turned to Dale Jr.'s car that day.
Well, then we could say the same thing about Jeff Gordon's T-Rex car.
We could. Absolutely. But it was within the... But I think the 2001 Pepsi 400, for those of you who don't know or who are new to the fans, who are new fans to NASCAR, that was the first time NASCAR returned to Daytona after the death of Dale Earnhardt in the 2001 Daytona 500. And as crazy as it is talking about this, I just rewatched that race throughout the weekend because I was bored and I was doing nothing at work, and it was a slow day, and I was watching it, and Dale Jr.'s car was had a bit of advantage there compared to everybody else. And the rumor and the theory behind this is Dale Jr.'s car the officials turned a blind eye and let some stuff pass. And even Jimmy Spencer brought it up that his car was above par and way better than everybody else's because they wanted that Cinderella story and that storybook story following the death of Dale Earnhardt. And I'm curious to see what Charlie thinks about this, because I know you were a big Dale Earnhardt fan. You were a big Dale Jr. fan, and you probably watched that race in 2001 like I did live. You wanted to see Dale Jr. win, but then in hindsight, you kind of see some stuff there that are a bit inconsistent with what it was at the time.
Yeah, I can't argue with you a whole lot on that one, just for the fact of, he definitely had a super fast car, but Dale Jr. was as good as his dad on restrictor plate tracks as well. So I think he knew how to drive the track, knew what to do and when to do it. Now, does having a really, really good car help? Absolutely. So, I see where you're coming from on that completely, and I could see where the speculation and the hearsay or whatnot comes in. But I feel like some of the same thing can be said with some other drivers, and I don't want to take Jimmy Johnson. There's been some races where Jimmy Johnson just won by half a track or more, and this is on mile and a half, not necessarily a super speedway. So I feel like that goes on more often than what we would really like to admit. maybe not the past couple years, but definitely back then into early to mid 2000s, it definitely I would not be surprised if we, somebody, one of the tech officials comes out later on down the road about, yeah, we turned a blind eye to some stuff.
Right. I'm curious to see what they would say to that. And Austin, I don't know if you were privy to that, because I think you're 22 now. You're 21 now. So
no, I was 1 year old. 1 year old when that
you're 1 year old when it happened. So you probably don't remember it. Go back and watch.
Sitting in Leo's lap watching that race.
Yeah, I guarantee you I was.
I tell you what, Austin, go back and watch that race on YouTube. It's available on YouTube.
I've seen the highlights of it.
You've seen the highlights,
Yeah.
but watch the whole race, because Dale Jr.'s car was strong that night. I mean, he was making passes that you couldn't make without a drafting partner at Daytona.
Yeah, and a lot of Junior's downfall on restrictor plate tracks later on was just because nobody would work with him. Which doesn't make any sense, because if you wanted to go to the front, you wanted to work with Dale Jr. to go to the front on restrictor plate tracks. You always saw Dale Jr. and Tony Stewart pair up, and they were going to the front.
Dale Earnhardt.
Nah, it was Junior and Stewart. Yep, they would always pair up, and you knew once those two. And this was back when Stewart was still in a Pontiac, and they were going to the front like real quick. Those two worked so well together on restricted plate tracks. So,
right, and that was just one of those things there. And Matt Camphor was nice enough to bring up this. It was the Bubba Wallace-Denny Hamlin fight apparently happened in the 2018 Daytona 500. I think that's when Bubba finished second in that race.
Yeah,
that was Denny's first Daytona 500. Why they got in the fight, I don't know. I don't remember much about that race.
Neither do I.
But
I missed that one.
Let's see here. Going down to, I think, the fifth. Anything else about that? And I'll have to get back to that one. But going to the fifth level of the Ice Burg here, do you guys have anything, or you want me to start?
Yeah. Dale Sr. warns about B.U.R.N.S.
Really? Let me see if I can find that here, because if that's true, well, then Dale Earnhardt called it, and he was a smart guy. He was very political in the sport. He would talk to.
And, I feel like that's where Junior gets it from as well, because Junior's not shy on saying, "Look, y'all are stupid for doing this," as far as when it comes to NASCAR. So, but I'm pretty sure that's a level 5 towards the. It's on there.
I'm trying to find it here, but yeah,
I think you're on level 6.
Oh yeah, I am on level 6. I'm sorry.
You
got stuff.
Yeah, Lee, it's Ken.
Yeah. Anyway, so while I'm on my level 6, it says it was a dinner with racers with Jeremy Mayfield, and he told a story about when Dale Earnhardt told him to save his money because B.U.R.N.S is going to take over the sport and ruin it. So this was something Dale Sr. told Jeremy Mayfield. So even before he came, drivers knew he was bad, and that now that he is in charge, everyone sees he is terrible. I hate to sound like a, whatever word, but how in the world can he still be left in charge? And that was from some other drivers, back then. And definitely, I mean, if that's true, Earnhardt Sr. called it.
And he called it 100%. I don't recall ever hearing anything about that. That might have been before my time. I started being a fan of the sport in 2001. But if that is true, and it sounds like it is true, I mean, Dale Earnhardt called it. And he just bumped up a few notches in my book, because I think he wanted the sport to survive. He wanted to or succeed and prosper. And I think everybody but Brian France and Bill France Jr. and everybody else attached to the France family, because it is at the end of the day a family-owned business with the France family. And now we got Jim France in charge in there because of what happened with Brian and his DUI conviction.
Yep.
And what Brian France did to this sport of NASCAR is appalling. Bill France and Bill France Jr. are rolling in their graves going, what the hell did you do to what we created?
Why did we leave you in charge?
We gave you the keys to the kingdom, a kingdom that was thriving. And now now you have taken it, and this being Brian France, have taken this and put it down the crapper so far. And you're not in charge. The corporate America is in charge, dictating of what sponsors can be on the cars, what can be done, and trying to, and again, and I go back to Steve Phelps on this, and what he said on the Dale Jr. download, and when he said they chased one new fan by sacrificing 10 old fans. And we've seen it today. We saw it in 2020. We saw it throughout the course of NASCAR, where they're going to make these woke decisions. And the famous saying, you go woke, you go broke. And that's what NASCAR has done. They're trying to keep their image sparkly clean when that isn't what NASCAR is. I mean, not saying it's a all out, no rules, whatever, but corporate America, these drivers are walking a certain way, talking a certain way. And we had Howie on the show. We had Howie on, and I'm not going to throw him under the bus and tell you guys what he told us, but man, I mean, you got to walk a chalk line if you are a driver or involved in any way at the top level of NASCAR. And that's the way it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be the way that it is portrayed. They're taking away drivers' personalities. They're putting restrictor plates on the drivers.
They're not letting them voice their opinion.
No, and if you voice your opinion, heaven forbid.
Yeah, you get in trouble or you get called out, or.
But once people wake up to this and get red pilled by this, then you're gonna realize that NASCAR has, what the hell is NASCAR doing? I mean, and talking to and some guy started at the firehouse. I'm not gonna say his name, but I would like to have him on the show one day. And he talked about, he used to work in NASCAR. I'm not going to tell you where. I'm not going to tell you in what capacity, but he used to work for NASCAR. So naturally, I gravitated to him and like, oh, man, we're going to talk about racing. And he red-pilled me so much, guys. He woke me up to so many things that I would say this as a casual fan from the outside looking in. But then he would say, well, look at this from the outside, from the inside looking out, and tell me what you think. It's like, what the crap? I mean, I was blown away by half this stuff he said to us, or said to me, in our 3-hour conversation about what's wrong with NASCAR. And this is kind of what the genesis was of this episode, was going down the rabbit hole, is saying people, I mean, it's just, I mean, there's so much crap that's went on behind the scenes. And it really all started when Bill France Jr. said to Brian France, here you go. And I think that's a 100% truth right there. But I know you skipped ahead, Charlie, but that was a good one. I would have never thought about that, but what about you, Austin? Wait, anything else you guys want to add on to that?
No,
I'm all right too.
All right, so Austin, what's your one from level 5 here?
I don't know. I'm trying to find a good one.
Well, I'll find a good one right here. The Jeff Gordon to Formula One. Back in, I believe it was 2003, 2002, there was a thing on the Speed Channel called Trading Paint, where a Formula One driver would let a NASCAR driver drive his car, and a NASCAR driver would drive the Formula One car. In this case, it was Jeff Gordon driving Juan Pablo Montoya's Williams BMW, and Juan Pablo Montoya would drive Jeff Gordon's DuPont Chevrolet. And the same thing happened with Tony Stewart and Lewis Hamilton at Watkins Glen, where Lewis Hamilton did the same thing with Watkins Glen that Tony Stewart did. And it was a lot of fun because it kind of made you think, oh, it's Lewis Hamilton coming over to NASCAR, is Juan Pablo Montoya coming over to NASCAR, and it would just kind of speculate. It would be a lot of fun to watch. But in this case, Jeff Gordon was running times to be competitive enough to be a relevant force in Formula One. However, if I do recall correctly, and I think I do, Jeff Gordon was saying this hill was too steep to climb to learn a new car. I'm well established in NASCAR. I like NASCAR. I'm going to stick with NASCAR. But there was a rumor there going around for a while that Jeff Gordon would in fact race in Formula One against Juan Pablo Montoya, and that was a rumor that stuck for a year or two when that happened, and I would have been a big fan of, and I think that would have helped not only Formula One with the American fans earlier on than it is now, but it would have been a lot of fun to see Jeff Gordon race Formula One.
Yeah, if he was running, times that would have been the, competitive times in F1, it'd have been interesting to see. But I feel like that would have been the same case as it is Jimmy Johnson in Indy cars right now. Like you're well established in one, you want to jump out and get in another one. Is it too late to learn another car? So, yeah, I mean, he qualified for the Indy 500 and led a lap, whatnot. But that's the highlight of his IndyCar career right now. So, I agree. I get it. It's his first full season. But I feel like that might have been where Jeff Gordon was coming from. And Jimmy Johnson's kind of proven that may be true.
Right.
All right, for mine, I'm gonna pick this kid-friendly merch. What's that about?
I think I know what that is. Like when you see a Brad Keselowski, like in NASCAR video games on the console, instead of having Miller Lite or Bud, it would usually say Brad or Rusty back in the day, or Dell or Sterling Marlin when it was Coors Light. And with the kids merchandise, it wouldn't say like Miller Lite. It would say like Brad.
So it's just taking off like tobacco products and beer off the shirts and putting the drivers' names on there.
Right. So it's similar to that line. I've seen that at like Brad Keselowski's hauler when he was sponsored by Miller Lite, and it would say, if you're under 21, we have alternate selections for you so you don't wear a beer product. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, most rednecks don't care. So, did you get Junebug a Busch Light shirt from the hauler? He turned 5 yesterday.
Yeah. It's time for him to man up.
I had my first beer when I was 4. Why can't he?
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to anything else about that level of the iceberg. We got 2 more levels of the iceberg to go, and then we're going to wrap it up here with our final thoughts. But I got one for I think that was the 7th level of this one. But if you guys don't have any more, I'll go ahead and hit into that.
We're on level what? 6.
You got to pick a level 5 one.
Yeah. So, all right, for my level 6, I'll go back and pick a level 5, and I'm going to say NASCAR at Le Mans.
Okay, NASCAR at Le Mans. This is a relatively new issue or new topic here coming up here, but go ahead and give us your opinion of NASCAR at Le Mans.
I like the idea with this new car, the sequential shifters and stuff like that. I like the idea of them developing a NASCAR, car or a Cup Series car and trying to run it at the Le Mans. But I don't know if this is specifically what it's talking about, as it is maybe just all the Cup Series drivers, or a lot of them, getting in on the rotation of drivers at Le Mans. So that may have been what it's referring to, or it could have been talking about the actual Cup Series car. And I think it's going to do great. I mean, they got Hendrick Motorsports on board, Chevrolet on board. Chevrolet's already pretty big into Le Mans with the prototype Corvettes and stuff like that. So I like the idea. I think it's going to be a great show next year. I will actually stay up and maybe watch all of 24 Hours of Le Mans at Daytona and see what this car will or will not do.
Yeah, I got the gist of there before I went to go grab more beer here in NASCAR is coming into 24 Hours of Le Mans, and I might stay up and watch it more. I think it's a good thing as well. I think it'll promote the sport. Denny Hamlin's complaining was enough to get Toyota involved with that as well.
What a little bitch.
Okay.
I mean, golly, that is.
Okay.
That's ridiculous.
Excuse Charlie for his foul language.
Yeah, but that fires me up. Like now that he's a team owner, he just thinks that my team didn't get
that the world owes him everything.
Asked about this. Nobody gives a crap. Okay, like the only reason why your team's doing worth the crap is because you brought Kurt Busch on board this year.
Right.
So Chevrolet's, like I said before you put your headset back on, Chevrolet's already established in the Le Mans series with the prototype Corvettes. Yep. Why not get Chevrolet on board with this new car? That is a no-brainer to me. Why would you go after Toyota and stuff like that? So
right, and I think it wouldn't be necessarily. I mean, Toyota. I mean, let's face it here. Let's take this down another path here. The manufacturers in NASCAR aren't what they used to be as far as importance. I bet in Formula One, it is very important to win the Constructors' Championship. Not only does it bring you money, it brings you prestige. Mercedes winning the past, I think, 7 Constructors' Championships brought them massive prestige. Now you have NASCAR, Ford, Chevy, Toyota, and who won it last? Oh, excuse me. Who won it last year? No one knows. No one cares. I mean, maybe the big manufacturers do, but it isn't covered in the press like in Formula One. So, I mean, when you talk about this is good for Chevy and NASCAR, it might be good for NASCAR, but Chevy's already established in there. So, I mean, as far as Chevy going over from NASCAR, making a NASCAR prototype car for Le Mans, it's like, okay, that's cool that NASCAR is getting involved there. They're going to get kind of a stock series in there, or stock class in there, I should say. But I mean, the manufacturers, to my point, the NASCAR manufacturers in the NASCAR, it
doesn't mean anything compared to other sports.
It's not as prestigious, I feel. I mean, it was like back in the day when Rookie of the Year was such a big deal. But I can't even remember any Rookie of the Year past 2002, and that was Jimmy Johnson winning Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, and I would take it a level, a step further, as I really don't remember it past when Dale Jr. and Matt Kenseth were competing for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, Matt Kenseth ended up winning it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was just one of those things where I feel like you could go more down the rabbit hole with the manufacturers in NASCAR and why they're not held up to why it's not more prestigious than it is. That's a good one, Charlie. I like that one. You got one, Austin, or you want me to go?
I actually do. Dale Earnhardt's death car. Is it on display? I know there's been a couple pictures floated around the internet.
I highly doubt it is on display whatsoever.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that one.
I mean, I'm not display. Is it in a garage somewhere, or do they totally crunch it and get rid of it?
I don't know what they did with that car. I know I've seen pictures of the car post-race or during the investigation of the death of Dale Earnhardt in 2001. I've seen pictures of it, but I don't recall. I don't know what they did with that car. And if you want to, you could Google it real quick and see what they did to Dale Earnhardt's death car, but I doubt it's on display. I don't know where it is.
I don't think they would have gotten rid of it, but I definitely don't think it's at Dale Jr.'s graveyard of cars.
No, it's not in the Hall of Fame either. There's no way they're going to put that in the Hall of Fame. But I don't know what happened to the death car of Dale Earnhardt. I couldn't tell you. I mean, if you want to Google it real quick while I give you mine, but that's a short rabbit hole. I don't know what they did to that car.
What's yours while you Googles that?
Okay, so mine here on this one is Dateline NBC racist segment here. And I actually Googled this one, and this was back in 2006. And this is from ESPN. It says NASCAR outraged by Dateline's racial story approach. And it said NASCAR and NBC confirmed that it was sending Muslim-looking men to the races along with a camera crew looking to film fans' reaction. The NBC crew was apparently on site at Martinsville, Virginia, walked around and no one bothered them. NASCAR spokesman Ramsey Poston said Wednesday, "It is outrageous that a news organization of NBC's stature would stoop to the level of going out of its way to create a news story instead of reporting news. Any legitimate journalist in America would be embarrassed by this stunt. It's the obvious intent by NBC to invoke a reaction, and we're confronted by our fans that wouldn't take the bait," said Ramsey. So here's what I got from this story. Seems like NASCAR NBC hired a bunch of Middle Eastern men with a camera crew and everything to go around Martinsville, Virginia, and interact with their fans, trying to bait them into being racist, because apparently NASCAR was racist. It's racist.
Yeah, well, if it didn't prove it was racist then, I don't know where this whole aspect of the past couple of years. Well, never mind. Let me rephrase it. I do know exactly where it come from,
Yeah,
but we're not going to talk about it. But, if it wasn't racist then, why is it racist now?
Right. People in NASCAR has had this stigma for a long time that it is a good old boy sport, a white Southern man sport, when it is branched out from the Tar Heels of North Carolina, the plains of South Carolina, the high country of South Carolina, the mid state of South Carolina, into areas that I bet Bill France himself didn't even think that it would go into, such as California, Portland, any other place like that.
And not even the areas that it's went to. Look at the diversity in upcoming, leagues, like what used to be called Hooters Pro Cup and, Truck Series and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's not just a Southern good old boys sport anymore, and it hadn't been for years. So, the racist thing, I'm just not sure where it's coming from, especially the past couple of years, because nothing has changed other than, certain drivers, but nothing has changed from what it was to what it is now.
Right. And I've been to several NASCAR races from 2003 all the way up to last season. I haven't been to one yet this season. But in every NASCAR race that I've been to, I have not seen one prejudice act. I have not seen one incident where anybody could say that was racist, or that was bigotry, or that was this, or that was that. But of course, NASCAR now under Jim France and in our woke community that we're in now has to make it to where we have to keep such a polish on this.
But we have to recognize individuals for more than them just being drivers.
Right. And that's really the big thing. You take a non-NASCAR fan and show them a picture of Haley Deegan's truck, the number one Monster Energy Ford, there in the truck series, and then just say, what can you tell me about this driver? And if they won't know anything, they'll probably say, I don't know who he is. You put on a helmet, you can't tell if the driver is white, black, Asian, Mexican, anything else. You can't tell if they're a man or a woman. You can't tell anything about that. You can't tell if they're gay or straight. You can't tell any of that. The real thing is if you criticize someone on the track about their driving habits, and we'll take Bubba Wallace, that you could take their driving habits and say, man, Bubba Wallace isn't a good driver. Why are you automatically racist?
Yeah. You're saying that because he's,
you're saying
black. I mean, that's it.
Right. And that's the only thing that they have to go against you, the critics of NASCAR. It's like, oh, you're only saying that because racist.
We're saying that because he sucks.
I didn't hear one person complain anything about Daniel Suarez winning this past, or a couple of weeks ago at Sonoma. I didn't hear one bad person. In fact, we all applauded it. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Like, hey, we're happy that you got you one. I mean, you're long past due for it.
You want to know why this is? And a lot of people on Twitter piss me off about this. A lot of people say that, why don't people give Daniel Suarez the crap that they give Bubba Wallace? It's because Bubba Wallace
brought it on himself.
Talks. Daniel Suarez keeps his personal opinions to himself.
Yep.
And and I don't care. And if he has every right to say whatever he wants, but
he don't.
I think Daniel Suarez is smart enough to where he knows if I say this, I'm going to be like Bubba Wallace, and I don't want to be like Bubba Wallace. I want to be Daniel Suarez. I want to be a well recognized stuff. Yeah, he has this Daniel is what Suarez amigos, Daniel's
amigos,
but that isn't a bad thing. That's like, wow, that's really cool. I mean,
it's
that's
the fan base that he brought to the sport.
Fans,
and fans.
If anything, that's just bringing more diversity into the NASCAR. And you know, I'm sorry, but where was this racist aspect at? I mean,
there was nothing racist about NASCAR in the years that I've watched NASCAR. Now, have there been incidences in the past? Absolutely.
Yeah, like the noose at Talladega. I mean, that was racist.
That wasn't even racist. That was
I know that was a freaking hoax.
But who's the? Oh gosh,
it was a witch hunt.
I'm drawing a blank here. One sec here. I'm drawing a blank here.
Well, while you figure out what we're talking about.
Okay, here we go. I'll say this real quick. I will give critics of NASCAR this. Back in the 60s, Wendell Scott, NASCAR's first African-American driver, won himself a race. And in order to prevent a riot, they awarded the race to the second place driver. And they gave Wendell okay, here you go. Afterwards, they will award the points afterwards, and the official winner. But that was back in the 60s. I think
exactly that was a different day and age,
right?
Period.
But everybody that's a big critical fan of the sport wants to go back to that one incident and say, "See, there, NASCAR's racist." And
that's just like the majority of people do nowadays. They harp on the past.
Yep.
To bring up issues nowadays. So, like, well, I'm sorry, but the past is just that. It's in the past. So, I mean, so I had to go talk to kindergartner through third graders today and actually read a book, stuff like that, talk about stuff. And it was based off American heroes.
Right.
And I read the biography of Abraham Lincoln. Because by far, probably one of my favorite presidents. And he's known for just all kinds of stuff, but the main aspect he's known for is, getting rid of slavery. So slavery was done away with a long time ago. I don't know why they keep bringing it up nowadays, but I know that's going way off in the rabbit hole. But anyway, y'all go ahead.
We don't even talk about those topics on this show, Harley. So, yeah, a special episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's your turn, Charlie. What do you got here for us?
Yeah. So my bottom of the iceberg subject, and that's only because in light of what has happened this year with him as well, Denny Hamlin hookers.
Denny Hamlin hookers. What's that? Oh, okay. So apparently, him and his baby mama, I won't even call her his wife. I don't even know what her name is. They're not even married. They have a couple kids together, and Denny Hamlin is I don't even know what to say that because I really don't know much about it. I try not to get into drivers' personal lives there, but what do you got for us, Charlie?
Well,
it just looked cool.
Yeah, man, so all kinds of stuff. You can't even really Google this kind of stuff nowadays. So a lot of the stuff was, Denny Hamlin is, has paid people for sex and stuff like that before. So
that's about it.
It's probably a bad subject, but yeah, he was accused of a lot of stuff, and I think a lot of that may be thought more of, especially with the issues that he's had personally this year, and him coming out, or not him coming out and saying it, but his baby mama pretty much saying, "Look, I'm done with an abusive relationship and stuff like that." So, does that bring light? More, does that shed more light on the Denny Hamlin hooker story? Who knows? So just a different subject for sure. So,
Right.
what's y'all's? We'll get off that subject.
Okay,
What's y'all's?
So my final layer of this iceberg here, and this was a tragedy that happened in the history of NASCAR. It was the Charlotte Walkway collapse following the 2000 All-Star race where Dale Earnhardt Jr. won. It was a big great celebration in it, and I don't know if you remember this, Charlie, and I'm sure you do. And I know seeing it, that walkway connecting the racetrack side to the campsite side. There's big concrete walkway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that collapsed and it killed a number of people during the post race. I guess it wasn't engineered right and it just collapsed. And it caused kind of took the wind out of Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s first. It wasn't his first official points paying win, but he won the All-Star race. So that was a big popular win. Dale Earnhardt Jr. won the All-Star race. And that kind of took away from it. That was bad for the Speedway. That was bad for NASCAR in general. And that event, the 2000 Winston, has a black eye because of that one incident.
Yep. No, I agree completely. So it's, sad subject, but unfortunately it did happen.
It did. And it was quite unfortunate. Now we're going to go here to Austin for the final layer of the iceberg here. Austin,
final question of the final layer, because you yourself are the bottom of the iceberg. Go ahead.
I remember that.
Austin, What do you got here, man?
You want to talk about the Rick Hendrick fake leukemia?
I don't even know if that's true or not.
I just Googled it, and he said he was diagnosed, but I didn't hear anything about faking it.
That was during the 2008 season, I believe, or the 2007 season, one of the two. I think it was 2007.
I think it was 7.
Where he was diagnosed with leukemia, but then there's a rumor flying around out there that he only did because he was in trouble with the IRS and taxes and all that stuff. So he couldn't show up to the racetrack, so he faked leukemia. Supposedly, I think he was really diagnosed with leukemia. That's a very bad thing to joke about, is any type of cancer diagnosis. So I'm going to have to say that's kind of just a rumor that was floating around for people that probably didn't like Jeff Gordon at the time beating Dale Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt flipping on the back straightaway during that race. I'm going to have to say that was probably just a rumor.
Yeah.
There's some good ones in here. I don't know. Buffy Waltrip affair with Dale Jarrett.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. Again, if it's deals with personal stuff, I don't care. I'll stay out of that because it's just not a
really true. We're here just to talk about what might or might not make the sport.
What's the NASCAR Open Wheel League? Is that the Wheeling Tour, the modifieds?
Probably. Yeah. I'm gonna say that's probably what it is.
I'd love to race a modified. Not gonna lie.
That would
if I had that over, I don't know, maybe a couple of different late model rides, I'd run a modified all day.
Well, they don't have a change, so you got nothing to worry about.
Yep, exactly. Just got U joints.
All right. Well, that was our layer of the iceberg. We're getting almost to the 2-hour mark here, or the hour and 30-minute mark here, as far as the show here. So, we covered a lot. We went down a few rabbit holes here. That was the point of this week's episode. It was a fun episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it out there, and we're going to get ready to get into our final thoughts. That being said, before we get into our final thoughts, anything else from you guys?
No, I'm good, man. So
I'm good too.
All right, let's get into our final thoughts here.
White flag, white flag, white flag. 1 lap to go. 1 lap right here.
All right, I've been meaning to change that, by the way. I want to update that. We've had that same introduction to our final thoughts here since the introduction of this show back in 2019 when it was called In the Marbles. I almost called it Rambling About Racing, but when it was called In the Marbles, we've had that introduction to our final thoughts here. But our final thoughts consist of our driver, or not a driver of the week, not yet. We might bring that back here. But this week in NASCAR, our question of the week and our fantasy standings, given that there was no cup race this past weekend, we're not going to cover fantasy standings here. But we're going to go ahead and hop into this week in NASCAR. And do either of you have a question of the week by any chance?
I don't.
Oh, boy.
No, I hadn't even. I forgot what my one was last week that I was going to ask.
Well, I'm going to look into this this iceberg here and bring up this. I'm going to bring this up. Oh, okay. Well, I got a question of the week here. So for this week in NASCAR, we're going to cover that first. Back in June 24th, 1973, David Pearson noses out Buddy Baker in the Motor State 400 at Michigan. The first race staged at the 2 Mile Oval since Roger Penske became its owner and promoter. The race is the only NASCAR event at Michigan in 1973. Penske elects to replace the summer NASCAR Winston Cup Grand National event with the Indy Car race. That's interesting. So Roger Penske took off Indy Car and replaced it with NASCAR on June 24th, 1973. And for our question of the week, I got this good one. And again, this is from the source that used to work in as part of NASCAR. The single lug nut. We brought it up earlier. We brought it up with our Talk with Quick Pick podcast. Go listen to them. We were on their show this week. So if you want to go listen to our mid-season review from Quick Pick podcast, go check them out. But our question of the week has to do with the single lug nut. My source tells me there is no need for a single lug nut. They can still do 5 lug nuts with the wheel type they have. Should NASCAR engineer that wheel to support 5 lug nuts?
Don't answer the question for next week, guys.
That's our question for next week, Charlie. Charlie was locked and loaded. He's like, I can fire on this one. But that is our question of the week for next week's episode, and we will have our updated answer. That's the whole point, man. It's supposed to wait till next week.
We'll do a new segment, question of the show, and then you can fire away and answer that one.
Yeah, we'll start doing our question of the show, man, because it's getting to the point where you're starting to come out guns loaded there. But gentlemen, anything else? I want to thank everybody who has joined us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter live. Really do appreciate it. Anything else before we wrap up this week's episode? Anything at all? Did you guys have fun with going down the rabbit hole on a few of this?
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's there's a lot of atmosphere to the show. So we definitely covered some very random subject.
And if, as you guys saw, there's a lot of stuff in each layer of this. I feel like if we have another off weekend for NASCAR, heck, we could come back to the NASCAR Ice Burg and say, well, what did we miss that we could talk about again?
Yeah.
Or bring up again. I've got I've got a few ones here that we haven't even touched that I would like to talk about, but it's just not in the cards right now because we just said one and done. So, but anything else, gentlemen, before we get into our final thoughts here? Or not into our final thoughts, before we wrap up the show. I've had a few beers myself, gentlemen. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
No, I'm good.
All right, gentlemen. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here on this week's episode of Ramblin' About Racing. Thank you so much for tuning into this week, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube Live. Really do appreciate you taking the time to join us here and talk about racing or hear us talk about racing. Make sure to go to ramblinaboutracing.com for links to all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube for the latest and greatest from the world of auto sports and for what's going on in our lives. For Charlie Hercus, Chuck8384, Austin Reeves, Austin_Reeves 6 on Twitter. I'm Matt Beamer, MBeamer22 on Twitter. Stay safe, and we'll see you following next week's races.